Hello, everyone. My name is Jordyn Smith, and as most of you know, I am the voice and the astrologer behind this YouTube channel, Nonconformist Conscience. A couple of things first, my apologies last week. I was only able to upload one video. My AC in my office went out and I had a sick kiddo. And so therefore you didn't get a video. So if you were looking forward to that, you didn't miss anything. If you want, you can go back and you can look at the video for Mars entering Taurus. And there's also a written report on my website for that. The other thing I want to mention is that today is June 17th. On the 20th, the Gemini birthday special is going to switch over to the Cancer birthday special. So if you are a Gemini and you want the birthday special, which is a $75 90-minute reading with yours truly over Zoom, where you get the recording going over your natal chart, meaning your evolutionary intention and this lifetime, and also your solar return, the dynamics that could be coming up for you to work on in order to evolve for the next year. Go ahead and purchase that. I pretty much booked all of this week. You don't have to book, you can't book for anything for this week, but you could book for something in the future weeks. And as long as it's booked before the 20th, you can have that reading for $75. On the 20th, like I said, it's going to switch over to Cancers. It's going to be your birthday season, and you will get the birthday special. So if you're a Cancer and you've been wanting a natal chart solar return reading, subscribe on my website. You just go to my website. You go to the forecast page, and it will pop up automatically for you to subscribe on there, and you will get notifications for whenever that birthday special goes live. And that way it can keep you up to date with the forecast and everything else. Again, these birthday specials are running throughout this year into next year as my gift to you all, because I love connecting with you all so much, and it helps deepen my understanding of these archetypes as well. So there's that. So let's get into your weekly forecast. So today, the 17th, Venus and Mercury both ingressed into the sign of Cancer. And let's start with Mercury first. Mercury is how we learn, how we express ourselves, how we communicate. It's also the ways in which we classify what it is we're learning about. It's how we classify reality, meaning that here's a door, I'm classifying this. There's a tree outside my window, I'm classifying that. Mercury in Gemini was about really gathering a lot of different information. And now that it's ingressed into the sign of Cancer, it's about learning about our emotional selves. It's learning from our emotions. I gave an example in my written report that really helps to understand the shift of Mercury moving from Gemini to the sign of Cancer, and what this is really reflecting around what it is that we're trying to learn. And also dynamics that we can need to express. So with Mercury and Cancer, it's about learning through our own emotional dynamics, through the polarity of Cancer, Capricorn, and self-reflecting on the emotional dynamics that are going on inside of us. We gain ever deeper layers of knowledge into ourselves. So in the sign of Gemini, Mercury, if you were wanting to learn about, let's say, vulnerability, which is a great Cancerian word, in the sign of Gemini, if you were wanting to learn about that, you would read books on vulnerability, or maybe watch a Brene Brown TED Talk or something like that. But that is just gaining knowledge from an external source. Gemini is energy that is moving outward. It's externalized. In the sign of Cancer, it's yin energy. It's saying, actually, in order to learn about vulnerability, one needs to experience vulnerability, meaning that we need to have the direct experience with our own emotions in order to gain knowledge. That then in turn pulls in yet again the sign of Capricorn, the polarity of Cancer, and becomes wisdom. It becomes wisdom that is garnered through the direct experience of going into our emotionality and gaining the knowledge from within that. This is also a time where one can be wanting to express more of their emotions. It's also a time where words have more weight, and we could be a little more sensitive to the words that are spoken to us or the words that we're speaking to someone else. And if that's happening and you're being triggered on an emotional level by something that someone says or the way that they're communicating, what that's teaching you, Mercury, is that there's something inside of you on an emotional level that wants to be learned and discovered. And there's more knowledge there that wants to be discovered. So it's really about learning from our direct experience with our own emotional dynamics and gaining more knowledge and wisdom regarding that. And that's actually really beautiful when we see that Venus is also ingressed into the sign of Cancer. Venus is about what we need, our relationship to self, our relationships with others. It's on the Taurus side, it's about learning self-reliance. And self-reliance really comes from knowing our values and our needs and meeting them for ourselves instead of depending upon someone else to do it. But Venus in Cancer is also where we could be really experiencing a lot within our emotional dynamics right now as a way to utilize that Mercury energy to explore more and to gain inner knowledge, right? On the inner side of Venus. It's also where we can, in true fashion of Venus, be learning self-reliance on an emotional level, meaning learning how to be better at emotionally validating oneself. You've got to think this Venus in Cancer is the ruler of the South Node in Libra as well. If you're someone who has depended upon others to emotionally regulate you or to emotionally validate you, this can really be highlighted, especially if there have been any type of Libra extremes. This is where one can feel like they're being thrown back in on themselves. Someone left, they're not here anymore. And I'm stuck with myself dealing with my own emotions. And so it's the need to really learn how to emotionally validate that within. You know, that's saying, I wrote a little bit about this too. I have a beautiful friend who has some Cancer energy in her chart, and she's been doing a lot of work on the inner child, which is, you know, part of a Cancer dynamic, is learning how to heal the inner child, to learn how to emotionally validate oneself. And so Cancer can bring up any type of insecurity. I feel insecure when someone talks to me or I'm doing something new and I have a lot of emotions coming up because I am not really sure how I feel about this. Anytime that she's feeling insecure or fearful stemming from her insecurity, she talks to herself like a mother would talk to her, Cancer. And she tells herself, it's okay. We're learning this for the first time. We're doing this for the first time. It's okay to be scared. That's a form of emotional validation. And it's also a form of nurturing the inner emotional dynamics, which is also part of the archetype of Cancer. It's to be able to be emotionally secure within oneself. And so there can be a lot of deep lessons in learning this. And again, with Venus ruling that South Node in Libra, there can be old dynamics surfacing around codependency or extremes or where we've externalized our emotional validation that can be triggered and can rise up into our consciousness as a way to, again, pull in Mercury and Cancer to learn from this, to create inner knowledge, inner wisdom about how we are meant to be secure. It's a natural law to learn how to be emotionally secure, how to emotionally validate, how to emotionally nurture oneself. Another great practice is whenever something emotional comes up and we are observing that it's inducing insecurity, it's to really ask ourselves and to self-reflect what is bringing up this insecurity, so that way we can learn more about our emotional natures and to have good self-talk. Venus and Cancer, self-talk, Mercury and Cancer, of going back to what my friend does, of just validating that it's okay to be afraid. This is new, it's never been done before. And really nurturing and being one's own mother at this time. With Venus in Cancer ruling Uranus and Taurus, this can help us to create more self-reliance, Taurus, through emotional validation. And it also helps in a Uranian transformative process. Deep insight into our own emotional dynamics that becomes self-knowledge during this transit can really help with creating sustainability from within, emotional nurturing, and emotional healing. And a great way to utilize Uranus and Taurus being ruled by this Venus is to really objectify what's going on. It's yes, to feel it, to connect it to the emotion. And Mercury in Cancer wants us to label it, but it wants us to label it and then sit with it, so then we can have the objectification and the insight that's needed, that then becomes inner knowledge. And so that can be, I talked about this a few weeks ago, but that can be where all of a sudden we're dealing with some type of intense emotional dynamic as a Venus in Cancer transit can trigger. It can be 1 minute we're fine, the next minute we're not. There's cross currents within our emotions and it's overwhelming almost. The thing to do to utilize Uranus and Taurus is to ground into that, to observe it, pull in Mercury and Cancer, to label it, to classify it, that's grief, and to sit with it and to allow it to wash over. And during that time, you can self-talk. It's okay to feel grief. It's okay to feel afraid to feel grief. It's okay to feel anger. Maybe you weren't heard or listened to about your emotions. And this is the other dynamic. Through nurturing this, we then understand what our actual emotional needs are, and then we can utilize that Uranus and Taurus energy to have transformation and becoming reliant in our own nurturing, to be able to say to ourselves, it's okay. The other dynamic, and it's to liberate from old patterns of behavior of where we couldn't emotionally validate ourselves. The other dynamic that can happen with the South Node in Libra, with Venus ruling that in Cancer and Mercury closely aligned with Venus, is where we could be learning, yes, I need to express myself. I'm nurturing myself, but I don't want to hold this in. I need someone to talk to, someone who's safe, someone who's not going to judge me, who's not going to be oppressive to where I feel like I have to suppress what's going on inside of me. There's a lesson with the South Node in Libra being ruled by Venus in Cancer, which is about learning who has the ability to hear you and who does not, who is safe to talk to, who is not. And so creating and determining that through first understanding what your emotional needs are. And an emotional need could be, I need to just express this to someone. Who's a safe person? Who do I trust? Who in my gut do I feel like is a safe person? And then expressing that. So Venus and Mercury are both in conjunct Pluto at this time. And Pluto, as you know, is in Aquarius, ruled by that Uranus and Taurus I was just talking about. And Pluto and Aquarius in conjunct this is where we can really come into an objective awareness about where we have over-identified with prior trauma or conditioning that's affected our emotional nature. Are you someone who's realizing that you've been denying your emotions, Mercury and Cancer, and you need to heal this and you need to feel it? And so needing the objective awareness to understand that maybe that's what's going on. And then being able to self-improve upon this dynamic by saying and affirming to oneself, I'm going to allow myself to feel what needs to come up on an emotional level. This can also be where old memories of traumatic instances of where we didn't feel heard or listened to, or where we couldn't express our emotional dynamics to someone. Maybe we didn't have someone safe. Maybe we didn't have a good attachment to a parent. This can be where this surfaces so we can objectify the impact that it's had on our ability to emotionally nurture us. For so many people during this time, their attachment styles can be surfacing right now. Did you have a parent who did the cry it out method, or did you have a parent who taught you how to nurture yourself? How to tell you that it's okay to feel whatever was coming up for you and that it was valid. If you didn't, it's objectifying this and then having the courage to validate that within yourself at this time. And so this is a way to self-improve upon becoming more emotionally self-reliant, thus pulling in Pluto's ruler, Uranus and Taurus, who is also ruled by Venus in Cancer. So then on the 20th, the sun is going to enter the sign of Cancer, and it is going to be the summer solstice, meaning that it's going to be the longest day of the year. And this is a time to be Cancerian, to go within and to nurture and facilitate in the process of emotional healing. It's where we planted seeds in the spring, and now we're having the patience to watch them grow through nurturing them, through watering them, through fertilizing them. And that's part of what the summer solstice is. And also with the sun in Cancer, the sun is about creative self-actualization. And through the transit, it's saying, hey, this is the route, the guide through. And it's about through understanding what you need to understand about your emotional nature and allowing yourself to nurture that, to invest in that. And it's a form of self-actualization. Looking at where the sun is falling in your own natal chart by house. If it's aspecting something, it'll give you more clues into what is this meant to do. Pretty soon the sun is going to conjunct my Chiron in the second house. And I have a Libra moon. So you always want to pull in your moon through this transit because it's going to be ruling the sun. But for me, this is about self-reliance on an emotional level and changing my awareness around my wounds that stem from a Libra moon dynamic of where I trusted the wrong people to hear me, to listen to me, and the need to self-improve by cultivating more self-reliance by listening to myself. Like, this is just one of the ways that this could come up. I'm just kind of giving this as an example. Or for me, that sun conjuncting Chiron could really illuminate the shift of awareness that I need to have around my own emotional dynamics. I mean, more will be revealed in a couple of days whenever that happens. And if I remember to, I will report back. But just looking at where this is, Gemini conditions my second house cusp. So it's me learning about my emotionality, right? So it's kind of got the same vibe of what's going on right now. If you have the sun transiting your 8th house and you have a Sag moon, this could be about needing to get to the bottom of all types of dependencies and where you feel powerful and powerless, dealing with your emotions and inner psychology, and bringing in the moon in Sagittarius. What beliefs are linked to that? So it could have all types of ways that this can surface. And so there's a need to really look at your own natal chart for any transit to see what is this aspecting, what house is it falling in, and it'll give you more information. So really, this is about self-actualizing through being determined to understand our emotional nature right now and the things that are surfacing. There are going to be things that are triggered, that swell up an array of emotional dynamics moment to moment throughout Mercury, Venus, and the sun being in Cancer. And it's so we can learn more about this. And it gives us the ability and the chance to learn how to nurture and foster this and to emotionally validate oneself. So the sun in Cancer is really about self-actualizing through emotionally nurturing and self-validating those emotional dynamics, that it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to have that emotion. Maybe you're someone who's experiencing a lot of anger and that emotional dynamic is coming up. Nurture that in a healthy way. Affirm to yourself, yeah, it's okay. Anger is a natural expression of where I haven't been heard or listened to, or where I haven't been believed, or there was an injustice that occurred, whatever reason. And to not get down on oneself and to allow that anger to be channeled in a healthy way. There's all ways that this can happen. Maybe you lost someone and you haven't processed it. And so there's a lot of grief that could be wanting to come up in order for you to acknowledge it. And instead of trying to suppress it or repress it, to just acknowledge and validate, that was really sad. I lost someone and it shows me I really love them. So again, this can happen in so many different ways, but ultimately it's about nurturing this and being your own mother. And it doesn't matter what gender you are, okay? All of us experience emotions, and all of us have an anima and an animus. And this is a time to really merge those, to allow oneself to feel it in order to heal it. Then on the 21st, here in the United States and other parts of the world, it's going to happen on the 22nd. We have a Capricorn full moon happening at 1 degrees. This Capricorn moon is ruled by Saturn and Pisces. And if you think back to January 11th, that's whenever the new moon in Capricorn occurred. And so we were initiating a whole cycle of emotional dynamics around self-reflection or inner authority, stepping outside of our own status quo, being self-determined to heal, all types of things. And just think back to what was going on that was initiated on the 11th of January. Now we're in the midway point. We have another new moon in Capricorn happening on the 30th of December. So at the end of this year, that will reach the completion of this full cycle, but we're in the midway point. And this is the full moon. And so something has come to fruition. But in order for us to proceed, we need to compare and contrast in order to throw off what doesn't really resonate anymore and to take what does. This is about also listening to yourself and making a correct judgment call around when to retreat, when to go out. That way one can be centered in your own identity, because this is about being your own authority. And so it can be where we're needing to self-reflect on our judgment and what constitutes our judgment, and to self-reflect on our emotional dynamics. This is yin on yin energy. Capricorn is a yin sign, and the moon is yin in nature. And so there is a deep need to go inwards right now in order to be your own mother and your own father through self-reflection of whatever emotional dynamics are surfacing. This new moon, full moon, is square Neptune. Neptune is at the anaretic degree, so 29 degrees Pisces. This can really help us to expose what needs to be exposed in order to know what needs to be thrown off. That way we can make correct judgment on this. If we are self-actualizing through nurturing and validating our inner dynamics, it's about taking responsibility as well. Capricorn, what responsibility do you need to take for your own healing, for your own decisions and choices that you've made? Are you someone who needs to have your own voice of authority be heard right now? That's also seen with Venus and Mercury are new phase to the sun, and they're also conjunct, and Mercury's new phase to Venus. So as things are exposed, we are learning more levels of emotional awareness to facilitate in the Capricorn full moon dynamic of emotional maturation. This is also looking at what we've learned. What have we gained since the beginning of the year? What have we learned about our conditioning? How has that impacted our emotional natures? How has it impacted our relationship to ourselves? How has it impacted the way that we do relationships with others? This is further high. There's something that wants to a new cycle that's wanting to start. It's being initiated with the sun, Mercury and Venus, all conjunct, and Mercury and Venus in a new phase to the sun. As we self-reflect and tap into our emotional dynamics, we then get to learn more about our emotional learning, what's affected us, what's impacted us, how's it impacted our judgment making. Do we ask and answer our own questions, or are we externalizing our validation and the answers we're seeking from another? This full moon is really highlighting the need to go within in order to learn more. And it's initiating this new cycle of self-actualization through nurturing this emotional dynamic. And it's about this taking responsibility about this, right? As things are exposed, to take accountability and responsibility. That doesn't necessarily have to be a bad or a good, but Mercury and Venus are also square the nodal axis. And so we could either go into South Node and Libra territory and start cultivating and recycling old patterns of emotional behaviors that have perpetuated extremes, or what the call to action is to focus on that North Node in Aries, all right? Which is about initiating a new cycle of patterns. And that North Node is ruled by Mars, which is sextile, in a crescent sextile to Mercury. And that Mars is in Taurus. It's about creating new patterns that are in alignment with our values, and also to create new patterns of emotionally being able to be self-reliant instead of Libra, depending on others to do this for us. And Mars helps us through the actions we create. It gives us feedback to learn. And then that pulls in the Mercury dynamic of learning more about our emotional natures in order to produce more self-reliance in this way, to emotionally nurture oneself through cultivating inner knowledge about ourselves. The moon is also trine Mars. This is reflecting this dynamic as well. It's about being self-determined to be self-reliant. And part of that is having the courage to go within and to ground into our emotional natures. Pluto is going to be in conjunct the sun at this time. Again, this is about us improving upon where we use our power and what constitutes power and what constitutes powerlessness, what emotional dynamics need to be liberated from, what emotional patterns that you keep recycling that need to be liberated from. The other thing that I do want to talk about is Mercury is also conjunct the North Node of Jupiter. Both of those are ruled by this Capricorn moon. Jupiter transiting is in Gemini, ruled by that Mercury, which is conjunct Jupiter's North Node. I'm going to pull up my screen to show you exactly what I'm talking about, because this can be a bit confusing. So if you look at this chart, Mercury is here, and it is conjunct the North Node of Jupiter at 9 degrees. Jupiter is in Gemini and ruled by Mercury conjunct the North Node of Jupiter. It's also conjunct the North Node of Mars. There's this symbiotic process that's going on. As we gain emotional, I'm going to stop this share. As we gain emotional security through nurturing this dynamic, through self-reflecting Capricorn on these dynamics and holding ourselves accountable and nurturing and validating this process, it expands upon our inner knowledge. North Node in Jupiter, conjunct Mercury in Cancer, ruled by Capricorn moon. It helps us to also throw off old conditioning so that we can expand upon the new. So that way we can utilize Jupiter and Gemini to expand upon our knowledge. And the North Node of Mars is also there. And remember that Mars is in Taurus, speaking to creating and cultivating new patterns of self-reliance and aligning ourselves with our values. And that means aligning ourselves with our values in a way that helps nurture the inner process of validating our emotional reality. So this is a really impactful full moon for all of us. I feel like we've got 2 Capricorn new moons and 1 Capricorn full moon that's bridging this for this year. And so we can see that on some level, we're wanting to change our emotional reality. That is a Capricorn moon, our emotional reality. And to understand what our emotional reality is through self-reflecting. And Saturn and Pisces ruling this is about really how we can heal, how we can dissolve old dynamics that have been learned, that have conditioned the ways in which we express, nurture, and validate ourselves on an emotional level. And it's about starting a brand new cycle that fortifies our inner relationship to self on an emotional level that creates a transformation. And it's about cultivating and creating new patterns of awareness through self-reliance and inner self-security. I can't tell you how many people have called me the past 2 days that I've been experiencing some type of emotional kind of, where they're thrown back in on themselves. And it is like gearing up for this full moon to take accountability for their own healing, for their own nurturing, for whether or not they've denied being responsible, for whether or not they've denied nurturing their emotional self, to be confronted on an internal level. Pluto in Aquarius in conjunct that sun that's opposing the moon, to throw off and liberate from where maybe we are trying to be emotionally validated from outside of ourselves, and it's actually re-traumatizing ourselves. Pluto in Aquarius, traumatizing. If we're always going to someone to emotionally validate us because we haven't been able to do that for ourselves, and they don't have the ability to do that, that is an act of re-traumatizing ourselves. Because if they've shown you the truth, why deny it? Saturn in Pisces is going to confront us with the actual truth of something. And so if you're someone who feels like they're being thrown back in on themselves, where you're left with nothing but your emotions, that is signaling there is a need for you to validate and nurture that and to become your own parent right now. To not do South Node and Libra. In order to create the North Node Aries new patterns of self-reliance, it's to self-reflect. Why am I this way? Where did I learn this? And where can I take responsibility for my own growth and my own healing? This is this full moon. It's going to bring up a lot for people. I've already been seeing it. And I have to say, the people that I've been seeing it in have Pluto in the 4th house. So if you're someone who has Pluto in the 4th house, you might be feeling this intensely, depending on, especially if that Pluto is in Scorpio or Libra, because you're having direct aspects from this by even if it's like a wide orb, it can be aspects through sign that are triggering that Pluto in the 4th house. It's an evolutionary lesson. It's an evolutionary intention. A lot can be coming up around feeling like we were neglected or abandoned by our parents. And guess what? Capricorn full moon says, hey, but you're an adult. You've got to take responsibility for this now. And you've got to learn how to nurture and validate yourself. And it's also Pluto and Aquarius and Jupiter and Gemini can be where we need to ask ourselves, why do we keep going back to empty wells and thinking that it's going to fulfill us? Where's the delusion in that? Saturn and Pisces. Where do I need to have a restructuring of how I understand myself on an emotional level? And so I say this often, to be gentle with yourself, but this is a week to absolutely be gentle with yourself. Be the mom and dad that you need. A great way to work with this is maybe get a picture of you when you were little and put it by your nightstand. Kiss it, love it. Tell that little person how proud you are of them. that you've come a long way, and there are things that are still scary. There's a lot of ways that one can work with this. Other dynamic for those who are really wanting to have a spiritual relationship. This is a time where one can have dynamics be triggered that can create the improvement of a spiritual relationship. A great way to understand this and to learn how to emotionally validate oneself, to cultivate self-reliance, and to cultivate reliance on not only yourself, but source, is to just ask, what do I need to be shown about my own emotional dynamics? And if you have a sincere intention, at some point, it's going to come into your consciousness, and it'll help you feel closer and closer to the source, because you'll feel the miracle in that awareness that can change an outcome in an instant. And all you have to do is ask with a sincere intention, and to have a sincere desire to understand that, and to ask source, and it'll come into your consciousness, and it'll help you understand you can rely on yourself. It'll pull in Capricorn moon, asking and answering your own questions, Saturn and Pisces, source helping. And it'll help you understand that you're more connected with that which can't be seen than you know. And it will change and shift from looking for it outside to looking for it inside. And that is the prayer of this week, especially with this full moon in Capricorn. So again, be gentle. There's a lot of healing that can come up, that can, it can be initiated. And a lot of insecurity can come up in order to find inner security. And so work with it. Mars and Taurus really speaks to work with the resources that are here in the present, that are at your disposal. A resource would be, oh my God, I'm feeling something. There's an emotional swell coming up. This is an inner resource for you to discover and to work with, to gain more knowledge, Mercury and Cancer, and to expand upon that knowledge. Mercury ruling Jupiter, and Jupiter's north node conjunct Mercury. So again, be gentle with yourself. This could be a really powerful healing full moon. It can also drudge up a lot, especially if it's been repressed, seeing as it's a Capricorn full moon. If there has been something that you've denied or repressed out of judgment, oppression, or guilt, this is a week that it could surface in order for you to self-reflect on it, so you can liberate yourself from that dynamic. And so this is your weekly forecast. I hope to see more of you guys in my practice. I say this every time. I love working with you. I love meeting you. And I hope to see you all soon. Have a beautiful full moon, and be courageous in your efforts to take responsibility and to nurture yourself. You are your own mother and father.